This is the Changemakers. Really pleased that you're joining us today. Well, decarbonization of the economy will quite literally require trillions of investment dollars globally, and the spend has already begun, as you know, but not just on massive future projects, but here as well. And it's government, sure, big government, but it's also local councils, it's also private companies, and I think in a very easy to understand way. And one company that's working on carbon abatement is LGI Limited, and its CEO, Jessica North, joins us here now. Jessica, welcome. So good of you to join us today.
Thank you.
Look, LGI has not been listed for very long, which to some retail investors is an impediment. It puts some retail investors off. So just walk us through the LGI origin story.
Sure. So LGI was founded in 2009 by our founder and managing director, Adam Bloomer. And LGI started off as a concept to basically take advantage of a niche area in the market in the industry of biogas extraction from landfills and generation of renewable energy using that gas. And Adam saw a gap in the existing market where the smaller to medium-sized regional landfills were not receiving the same attention as the larger metropolitan sites. He started the business as what you would probably see as a typical family founder-based operator business. But he had a strategy which he has built on, which the company has built on, and we've carried on over the years. We've had year-on-year growth since 2009, building on that foundation of thinking outside the box within our industry.
Okay, I again am going to take a step back. Biogas. I mean, what is the role of biogas in the energy transition?
So when we talk about biogas, we're quite specific to landfill generated biogas. So that is the roughly 50% methane, 50% carbon dioxide mix of gas that is produced by landfills when you bury organic type waste. So when we put our municipal waste into a hole in the ground and we bury it, inherent bacteria produce this methane carbon dioxide mix. We extract that gas, and where there is sufficient gas of sufficient quality, and that depends on the size of the site, etc., we are able to use the methane component in the gas as a fuel source to power gas-fired engines, bespoke landfill gas engines that then generate electricity, which we can export to the grid. And when we look at the role that this technology can play in our transition to greater penetration of renewables, more intermittent renewables, the solar and the wind energy into our system, we have to recognize that our grid is designed it requires almost like a constant sort of hum through the network. Mm-hmm. And our technology, the landfill gas energy, renewable energy, is produced 24/7. So it's like a baseload renewable. It's a unique baseload renewable power. And because landfills are located all over the place, you can have a distributed input into the network to help stabilize the network and provide that sort of consistency, that sort of hum or thrum through the network where it's needed to allow the more intermittent power sources, renewables, to come online.
So here we go. We've got a little bit of a graphic just because I think it helps people understand, because that biogas will be coming out of those landfills regardless if LGI is there, right? So you can have that biogas flare and then walk us through. So that is already taking out some of that carbon from the atmosphere.
So when you combust the gas from landfill, you are converting the methane, which is a highly potent greenhouse gas. Yeah. You are converting it into a far less harmful CO2 and water as a byproduct. But where you have sufficient quantity and quality of gas, where there's enough methane coming from a site, you can put on a commercially viable power station. And so the methane provides the fuel for an engine, which then produces electricity.
So you are doing the flares, you are transporting this to the grid. You've got the battery there in the orange. Are you building these batteries?
So our first battery project, where we are integrating, it's like a hybrid renewable project where you've got your gas engine from gas from the landfill producing electricity, and it's enhanced with a battery. So we are able, again, through using batteries, through combining in these hybrid systems, we are able to augment the power when it's needed into the grid, again, to enable these more intermittent renewables to enter into our grid system.
And so from the grid, it actually does end up being used by energy customers.
Yes.
Be that industry or retail customers.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay, so revenue streams. If we take that graphic away, I mean, how and where are you getting revenue from? Because it's sort of an infrastructure play, but it's my understanding that some municipalities may be in for some, not in for all.
So our revenue streams are generated through the conversion of that biogas into various different commodities. So where we have a flare that combusts the gas, but there's not enough gas or volume or the logistics don't add up to enabling power generation, then through that flaring activity, we are abating methane. We are able to register under the Emissions Reduction Fund for a carbon abatement project, generate Australian carbon credit units, and that produces a revenue stream. Where we can put a power station onto the site, quite often we have the carbon credits. We then also have wholesale power, and we have large-scale generation certificates under the Renewable Energy Target. All these acronyms I'm trying to now spell out, sorry.
Okay, so we'll start with the ACCU because a lot of our viewers will have heard of them, they're aware of them, but just because it's new to most investors, can you explain how it works for you at LGI?
Sure. So we develop the projects under the Emissions Reduction Fund. And there's a specific method we have to apply in order to qualify, in order to demonstrate that our projects meet the principles of offsets integrity, which means they have to be additional, they have to generate bona fide offsets. And because with landfill gas, the gas goes through a flow meter, it's incredibly measurable, verifiable. There's a very intense third-party auditing system under the Emissions Reduction Fund that every participant has to follow. And so we periodically report and claim the carbon credits from our different projects. We then hold those credits. Some of them we sell back to the government under their Emissions Reduction Fund contracts, their carbon abatement contracts that the government goes through an auction process to offer. We also have offtake agreements with other parties as well.
What's the tenure of those agreements? I mean, is that reliable out into the future? Can you quantify it?
So the contracts for landfill gas have been a maximum of 7 years. And from a business perspective, to have a 7-year guaranteed offtake agreement with the federal government, you are looking at such minimal third-party risk. It's a pretty incredible deal.
Yeah. So when you're selling to the grid, so that's another revenue stream, correct? Is it guaranteed to be sold? Your power, is it guaranteed at a particular price? Are you in the mix for the variable prices as well?
Yeah, so the company has a hedging position across all of the commodities that we sell. So we are hedged to a particular risk appetite on our ACCUs, on our wholesale power, and on our LGCs. But our business model actually looks for some of that volatility in the electricity market. And as everybody in Australia is aware, there's huge volatility in the electricity market at the moment with spot prices. But because we are able to flex our systems, and even more so with the introduction of batteries, we are able to have our maximum output of energy during those peak pricing moments, which is also when obviously there's a supply issue. It's when the grid needs that input of electricity, and we can take advantage of that up volatility.
Oh, so interesting. Okay, so I just want to flesh this out final. So you've talked about the LGCs, the large generation certificates. Where does that revenue come from?
So again, there are electricity parties who require LGCs to meet their regulatory obligations under the renewable energy target. And so we have offtake parties, agreements, and so we sell, some of it's hedged, sometimes we sell on spot, similar to electricity and ACCUs.
Okay. I just find it all fascinating, and we do need to learn the vernacular as investors, because this is a lot of the new world. So simply put, for my brain, which is better? Which is the more favorable revenue stream? What revenue stream do you want to grow the most?
I'm not going to give you a black and white answer.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
But we've actually strategically maintained over the years 4 or 5 revenue streams because of the volatility across all of these different revenue streams, which is a reflection partly of the Australian environmental policy environment in general, which having worked in a number of countries, it's I guess for me, it's sort of surprisingly volatile, and the policy, that certainly you see some very unexpected, decisions. However, once again, as a company, ever since inception, we've maintained multiple revenue streams. One of our other revenue streams is the lump sum fee from installing infrastructure. So that's just installing the gas extraction infrastructure on sites. And that also helps us play out the volatility of the other markets. But there are opportunities in that volatility across all of these revenue streams. So we want to see all of them grow, and we have strategies in place to do so.
Okay, that's really interesting. So we've got a map as well and a graphic of where your sites are. So is the strategy to develop those sites further, so maximizing how these councils or governments or businesses are interacting with LGI, or do you want to have more of those dots, all up the East Coast? Why not South and West?
So starting at the beginning,
yeah.
I think it's about 5 questions. We have this, so our contracts, and start at the beginning. The majority of landfills in Australia are owned and operated by local governments. So about 85% of our client base is local government. Our contracts to manage the gas and generate revenue streams from the gas across our sites, currently 26 sites in Australia, they are from 10 to 25 plus year contracts. Within that time frame, because the majority of those landfills continue to receive waste, feed the bacteria, produce the gas, so the gas flows increase, we have what we call organic growth opportunities within those sites. So we can add more assets to combust the gas for carbon abatement and for electricity production. So there's that organic growth piece across these long-term contracts. But then evidently we want to do more projects. I mean, what we are doing is having a benefit for the world, for the communities. We want to do more of this. So we have a pipeline of additional projects that we hope to be adding to that map. If you'd looked at that map of our sites even 12 months ago, the numbers were different. So it changes. This is an ongoing growth play.
What's the competition like? I mean, are there other groups here in Australia that are doing what you're doing in the way that you're doing it? I mean, of course you'll say no, but I'm wondering about the dynamics of the landscape.
So the landfill gas management sector in Australia is reasonably small.
Okay.
And you have specialists doing different parts of the work. So you have a couple of companies who focus very much on getting that pipe work in, so getting the gas extraction network in. You have a company that will focus on tuning the gas fields, doing that ongoing operation and maintenance. But we are one of probably 2 or 3 companies in Australia that actually builds, owns, and operates renewable power stations on the sites. One of the few that actually goes for these long-term contracts for carbon abatement as well. And I would say we've always sought to think outside the box and to really pursue that premium power position. So trying to not do things in the traditional way, also in the way that we seek an alliance type agreement with our clients, because we're there for the long term. And the environment in which people are operating landfills is also changing, the regulatory environment. And so having that flexibility and that alliance type arrangement simply makes for a better contract, more longevity in what you can achieve on the sites.
I have a viewer question, if you don't mind, which I think is good. It's from Norman. Hi, Norman. He says, Queensland Pacific Metals has recently established a partnership with Carbon Logica for carbon abatement at its tech project. I'm not sure what that is, but I think the key is, does LGI Limited have any plans to establish similar partnerships with, say, mining companies in Australia?
So our generation of carbon credits occurs from the combustion of landfill gas. Mm-hmm. So we don't have a plan to pursue, for example, there's a methodology that can apply to methane from mines. So that's not an area we would enter into. In terms of the offtake partners for our ACCUs, we have a number of offtake partners. We have pretty strong criteria about how we choose those offtake partners. We look for ethical alignment, and we are keen to have offtake partners who are genuinely seeking to decarbonize their activities as well.
I think you sort of addressed this a little bit earlier, but this is from Taj, who says, have you considered load shifting the power generation over longer durations, multi-day, et cetera, to, I suppose, capture electricity price volatility?
We do. So landfills, some landfills, not all, can almost operate like a sponge. You can have stronger extraction of the gas. You can suck harder on the field to get more gas out, more electricity generation at certain times of day. You can then relax it. Every landfill reacts differently, but some of them can have that sponge effect. Also with the batteries, evidently, when you have a lot of solar coming into the grid in the middle of the day, particularly in Queensland, and you are experiencing negative power pricing, so you don't want to export, you have that opportunity to recharge a battery and then be able to contribute to the grid in those peak times when supply and demand are out of sync again.
I don't want to do your work for you, but it's my understanding that LGI has been profitable since day dot, and you've confirmed at the half year that you do expect to meet your prospectus forecasts?
Yes, absolutely. So we're on target and very happily delivering and moving ahead with the projects that we had earmarked as part of the IPR.
Okay, and we've got those on screen now if anybody would like to look at them. And of course, you can always go to the ASX website, and all of this information is publicly available. You mentioned early in the piece that it's a founder-led business. I mean, the founder is still your managing director. You've got some long-term shareholders, from my understanding,
yes,
as well. Talk to us about that, about how you engage with your shareholder base and who the shareholders are, and just flesh it out a bit for us.
So in 2017, we did a small raise as a public unlisted company, and we brought on just over, I think, 100 shareholders in 2017. And that base has largely stayed with us through. And when we have AGMs, a lot of those shareholders actually come to the office. It feels a bit like family. So we feel a great duty with the communication and the involvement of, I guess, our original shareholders. Really delighted to be engaging since the IPO with not only our cornerstone investors, for whom we're incredibly grateful, but also for all the new investors who've come onto the books. And there's a lot of, I guess we try new to the listing space. So we are learning the ropes of communication. But I think that we're putting out quite fulsome, quite comprehensive information, which we did at the half yearlies, and will continue to do so. So we certainly welcome shareholder and investor commentary and questions. It's very, very fulfilling to see the interest in the business.
Here's interest in the business. Before I get to my final question, it's from Tony. He says, who owns the pipeline assets once your local government contracts lapse? So what sort of competitive process is anticipating for extending these contracts? Or is it felt that the contract term will see the full exploitation of gas from that site? I suppose it would. Those are all good questions.
Yeah, that's great. So if a landfill is still open and active, then you will continue to generate gas. I will note that one of our sites was closed over 20 years ago, and we are still generating power from it. So you would also want gas management on closed sites. We've been successful in renewing, I think, 3 or 4 of our longer term contracts. Some of them were just for operation and maintenance, some were for carbon abatement. And those contracts have gone into through a competitive tendering process. So that's incredibly rewarding as well to continue those relationships. But most councils, because it's local government, they must enter into a competitive process at the end of a contract term, and we participate, and I hope we put our best foot forward to win the subsequent ones.
I would like to know just a little bit about you, Jessica, because we have talked about ethics. We've heard you say doing good for the world, but it's quite technical. I mean, this is infrastructure essentially. What's your background? How did you come to this?
This is, I think, my 25th or 6th year in the waste industry. And so I have a background that is both technical and academic. I was in consulting for a while. I hold a master's degree in environmental science that focused on landfill processes. I hold a PhD in contaminant geochemistry, so focusing again on the landfill processes, and spent a lot of time in consulting, and there we go, research as well.
I'm glad I asked. And the vision, especially with these emerging smaller cap companies, I think you've touched upon some of the values, but what's the vision for LGI Limited?
So the vision is to continue this, to be part of this journey towards a zero carbon, renewable energy future. And I truly believe that we are contributing to that, even irrespective of the scale of our contribution, which I hope will continue to grow. But we're part of this vision of, I guess, a better future, a less carbon intensive future across the energy sector.
Jessica North, CEO of LGI Limited, thank you so much for joining us. That was fantastic. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.